What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JFK Debates Project. I'm your host, Matt Douthit from Dallas, Texas. Here back with Patrick Collins. Oh my gosh, Patrick,
Good morning, Matt. How are you doing today?
you came back for round two.
I did have any choice.
Didn't have any choice. Yeah. It is. It's a yeah. So, our part one of our debate, the viewers can check down below in the description box, as well as links to Patrick's two other debates that he did with two other researchers. Uh, yeah, let's just jump right into it, Patrick. You want to do a little recap, or do you want to? I figure pick up a few stuff, a little add-ons to where we left off, and maybe corrections and stuff. So, I'll let you have the floor.
Well, I think it's interesting, first of all, to look at it in the general sense that we have two people who I think we can fairly safely say, with a high level of confidence, we both know quite a lot, an awful lot about the subject, and yet we have two very different views on it, and that's quite interesting. And obviously, you'd expect people to have varying views on conspiracy theories, ranging from Oswald with help, Oswald being set up. But we actually fundamentally disagree on some very specific aspects of the case relating to the shooting. And I thought it was quite interesting. There were two things that I was a little bit surprised by. One is that you didn't think that there was an early missed shot, and you didn't seem to accept that that was something that was widely felt among the lone nut, as you call it, community. Most of the people I know who think that Oswald made the shots think that the missed shot was fired quite early, just after the turn. What is just after the turn is up to interpretation. I would say it's, when the car had leveled out. There are some witness testimonies that give rise to accepting that it was after the car had straightened up that the shot was heard. Whether or not it was close to frame 133, which is when Zapruder started filming again, or whether it was up to 150, 155 is debatable. And I think the other thing was that you thought that Kennedy was shot at frame 190, which I think you alluded to some of the House Select Committee on Assassinations and their work on that. I think that in recent years, for some time, that theory has not really been aired very much at all. So I was a bit surprised that that was something that you latched onto. So, and the other thing was, you thought that the neck wound by the Adam's apple could have been caused, or was caused, I'll say could have been caused, by a piece from the headshot, as in a bone or a fragment. And I think I would, having thought about that a little more, I'd be very surprised if that were the case, because would not the bullet or the bone have to go sharply downwards at a forward angle and then do an almost right angle turn outwards, forwards through the Adam's apple? So they were just some of the things that I'd like to ask you about. How strongly you feel about those points, or if you're kind of flexible on them.
I think I think what I said about the earlier missed shot is, I think I said something like a lot of lone nutters don't believe it was that early because ever since, like, 1993, when Posner's book came out, lone nutters agree that it was, most lone nutters say that it was around frame 160. I don't I wasn't saying that low nutters don't believe it in an earlier missed shot. I was saying I don't think a majority of them don't believe it was as early as you think, around frame 133. I think that's what, does that make sense?
Yeah. And what about this the neck wound? What is it that is this a firm conviction, or is it just a possibility, something that you consider might have happened, or that
Yeah.
you're convinced that it did?
Yeah, that's the thing I wish I had expanded on more in round one, because I didn't give any other evidence except for the fibers pushed out. There's no metallic residue in the tie or shirt.
There isn't, no.
Unlike all the rest of the clothing in the clothing in the shirt and the suit coat and Connolly's clothing, wherever the bullet pierced on, there's always metallic residue. But on the tie and in the shirt on his throat, there's no metallic residue. So I don't think it came from a projectile. And so this is where I diverge not only from lone nutters but from conspiracy believers, because tons of almost every conspiracy believer believes that this was an entrance wound. Forever, I've never thought that this was an entrance wound. To me, it doesn't make sense because it would have blown out the back and hit people behind them and stuff like that. And but
Yeah,
but people don't realize, like I said, just how small it is. It's you see how small that is? The diameter
yeah,
of the pencil, it's half of that. It's like 3 to 4 millimeters. So,
yeah. Of course. But do
so
bear in mind that you tend to get the bullet wipe or the residue, as you call it, only on the entrance wounds, because by the time the bullet's gone through Kennedy's upper back torso, it's deposited that material, so it's going to come out cleaner. That's the general that's the general consensus, I think, among ballistics experts. And also remember that I don't think there was any bullet residue on Connolly's wound, was there, in the back, which it tends to support it, the bullet having hit something first.
I'm pretty sure there was metallic residue in Connolly's clothes. That's what stands out. Why this wound stands out, because there's no metallic residue on the tie or Kennedy on the shirt of Kennedy. So whatever it was very, very, very small, and it came out the throat. So to me, I think it has to be a bullet or a bone fragment. Um, and you said, oh, how does it go in and go 90 degrees downward out through the throat? Well, like I said, if the rear head shot was at frame 327, then he's already, let's see, he's throwing back, and then he's already leaning forward. So he's not, it doesn't exit the throat at 223 when he's up, or 190 when he's sitting straight up. He's already leaned over. So there's no need for this 90-degree sharp whatever. Then whatever Martin Kelly said in my debate with him, I forgot to bring that up, but
Yeah, okay. All right. So you've lessened the angle somewhat, but you're still it's still stretching it a bit, in my opinion, because where is that? You're not claiming that it's the nose or base 567, 569, are you? No, you're thinking that it's a piece of bone or a smaller piece of bullet. What happened to it then? What happened to that bone? What happened to that piece of metal?
5 millimeters is extremely small, so it could have been lost in the car, or something like that, or blown out, or who knows. But to me, that's where I think the evidence leads.
Okay, but
You know,
what led you down that path though? Is it are you being completely agnostic about this, or is it because you want to find an alternative to the
no, 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 no,
official view?
no, 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 no. When I read, as I said, I never believed that this was an entrance wound, and I knew that based on them tracking the wound in the back at autopsy, probing it, it didn't go forward. So I was like, well, what caused this? And then I read Josiah Thompson's book, 6 Seconds in Dallas, his original book, and he put forward the hypothesis that it was a bullet or bone fragment exit. And I was like, yeah, it seems to make sense if you read that section. It
Okay.
seems to make sense. And um, I brought this up with Martin Kelly about how John Latimer's tests showed that even if you press the tie up against the skin, you know,
Yeah.
there's Latimer's exit wound test was not 3 to 5 millimeters. It was spitting out. It was irregular, and it was big and gross and spitting out.
Yeah.
I'll put it right here. And so
Okay.
like, I was like, wow, Latimer disproved the single bullet theory just by doing that because it was a big exit wound spitting out.
Okay. Well, he would it not be as a collar and a shirt and tie is can be quite tight, so you could press against the skin and hold it in place more. But anyway, what about the fact that in order for your um, hypothesis to be true, this bullet that hits Kennedy in the back, in the upper back, doesn't transit? And you said, well, maybe some gunpowder was removed, or it was a bit of a dud. Now, I can't remember, I have to be honest, where I got this statistic from. I think it might have been a guy called somebody McIver, who's got a collection of Carcanos, 6 or 7 of them. Um, he lives in New York. He's a Scotsman, and he told me that the dud rate on military grade ammunition for the Mannlicher Carcano bullet was about 1 in 7,000. And I think you were saying, well, we can't. How do we know that shot came from the Carcano? Well, if it did, and I believe that it did, I think it's highly unlikely that it wouldn't transit. And you did say that you thought perhaps the one of the upper rib bone might have been in the way, but there was no damage to that, was there? And there's no clear, obvious damage to the spine. The House Select Committee experts determined that one of the X-rays did show, was it a slight crack, which they said could have been caused by a shock wave or a direct impact, or just a glancing impact. But anyway,
Yeah, we
why
talked about that.
why wouldn't it go all the way through about 11 inches of relatively soft tissue if it didn't strike bone?
I can't really answer that. The only thing I know is that at autopsy they probed it and it didn't go anywhere. It seemed to be just in the skin.
Yeah.
From autopsy technician Jim Jenkins told me and tons of other authors about how they stuck the probe in and as I explained in my debate with Martin Kelly, and again, I'm tired of debating the single bullet theory,
Yeah,
but
sure.
but it's not like they just stuck it in and they said, "Oh, it doesn't work." No, they tried it. If you read all the uh, interviews with people in that room, they sat the body up. They tried to, they moved the arm up, trying to get because the body is not styrofoam. It moves, so they were trying to, and they knew this. They were trying to get it in the position where he was and try to make you know a path, but there was no path. There was no path. But anyway,
Well, that protein tissues in the muscles would contract as rigor mortis set in and would contract anyway. I've spoken to a couple of surgeons about this, and they were of the view that it would be quite difficult you wouldn't expect a probe to go all the way through. You might expect it to go a little bit further, yes. But I mean, that's something that we've discussed and it's been aired on various forums for a long time. Where are you getting the information that they sat Kennedy up as in the body and moved his arm to replicate his seated waving position in the limo at the time of the back shot? Where's that coming from?
oh gosh, I'd have to look. Yeah, I think that's in the HFCA interviews, or it might be in High Treason 2, or it might be. I'll have to. I don't have that offhand, but I can insert it right here later in the video.
Okay, well that would be worth having. So should we move on then to what happens immediately after the shots and the timing? Do you want to talk about the girls on the stairs? Do you want to talk about
Uh,
whether Oswald would have been able to get down to the second floor lunchroom
you also asked me about
within
frame
75 to
190,
90 seconds?
and you also asked me about frame 190, but I think I beat that to death a little. I think I hammered that. So, I mean,
Okay, well, in reference to frame 190, I think where I would take issue is if there was a shot at that frame, I don't think or within a range close to that particular frame, I don't think you can nail it down to 190 based upon 5 or 6 witnesses. You can just say that a certain number of witnesses gave a description of when they thought that first shot hit Kennedy, and it equates approximately to him just before he goes behind the sign. That's about as far as you can take it. I don't think you can. There's no need to limit it to one particular frame, and I don't really see the reason for doing that, to be honest.
So I should have made clear in round one that I don't think it was at 190. I think it was at frame 186 is when
Okay.
because 190 is when the camera blurs. It jiggles and
Oops.
as I showed in our video.
Okay.
And you can calculate, I mean, you can figure out when the shots are based on the when the shot startles a pruder and the camera blurs at 190, 227, 318, and 331. And that matches up exactly when the four shots happened. I think Kennedy was hit at 186 and his arm is thrown downward, like I said. And then 223, we agree that's when Connolly was shot, and the camera blurs at 227. The headshot's obvious at frame 313, and the camera blurs at 318. And I did not give any evidence or reasons why I think in that the 327 headshot, which coincides with the blur at frame 331, at 327, that's his head is thrown forward and the head wound changes. So
Okay.
anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Sure. So, in terms of that last shot being fired, um, Brennan sees whoever the assassin was pause by the window for a few seconds. I think, does Dale Myers have that? Or actually, Jerry Dealey has it as about 3 to 4 seconds.
Mhm.
So, walking across the sixth floor with all the boxes, looking at the photographs, I think you can say that perhaps one of the routes that he would have taken would have been against that back wall, which is the Houston Street wall, and to run or to jog up there, then cut across to the southwest stairwell area, and on the way, drop the rifle between two or three boxes. And that would have taken, when I did it that first visit up to the book depository that I did, I can't remember the exact number of seconds, but I think it was over half the time to get to the stairs that it was to get down the stairs to the second floor landing area. So it takes longer to cross the stair, the sixth floor, than it does to get down the stairs.
Mhm.
And so I would think it would be close to about 30 seconds from the window to the stairs, including the pause to drop the rifle. Not so sure about the pause by the window, but 30, 35 seconds. And then another 25 seconds to get down the stairs. I know I said I did it in like just under 50 seconds, but going incredibly quickly.
Well,
Even if it took him a minute and 10 seconds, a minute and 15 seconds, would you accept it's still long enough for him to be there in that little doorway area outside the lunchroom? Because I think Baker gets there at about 75 to 90 seconds later after the last shot, doesn't he?
74 to 78 seconds. That's volume 3, page 254 of his testimony. So
From
seven
Baker or from the Warren Commission?
from Baker.
Yeah, okay. And didn't he say though that it might, on reflection, it might have been longer? It might have been closer to a couple of minutes.
My notes say 74 to 78 seconds. That's volume 3, page 254. But I think people are missing the whole point. The actual point is that there's no evidence anyone at all was running down those stairs at that time. There's just no evidence of that.
Okay, well, that's an interesting point. First of all, my answer would be, why would there be evidence of someone coming down the stairs? Almost, the building is almost evacuated, and those that do remain are looking out of windows for the main part. So I wouldn't expect to see anyone flying down those stairs, but I would expect whoever made the shots to get out as quickly as possible. So what potentially saying is that perhaps the assassin didn't go down the stairs immediately after the shot. So what's your alternative scenario for the assassin not going down the stairs? Are you thinking that he might have used an elevator or a fire escape or
Who were the
hid in there?
who were the people who saw men running away from from the building?
Oh, you're talking about the rear exit.
Who saw a running man or running away, running out of the depository after, soon after the shots? Was that Randolph Carr? Richard Randolph Carr?
Yeah, it could have been. Or were you talking about Roger Craig and the man getting into a Nash Rambler or something?
So, I mean, people saw a man running out of the building. So
Possibly, yeah, yeah. But
that's what they. All right, go on.
I think what you were saying was that nobody saw anybody going down the stairs, and all I'm saying to you, I wouldn't expect anyone to
Not what I
see something.
said. That's not what I said. What I said was there's no evidence that anyone was on the stairs. There's no evidence that a shooter, anyone from the sixth floor, was running down those stairs. That's the actual point.
Well, that's the same as saying that nobody saw, because if somebody had seen that someone going down the stairs, that would be in the evidence. The fact is, nobody saw, so there's no evidence. But that doesn't mean to say somebody didn't go down the stairs. Just means that nobody was in the vicinity to see. When you go down those stairs, you've got, just bear with me, 9 steps. Then you've got a little landing, and then it turns through 180 degrees, and then you've got another 9 steps per floor. So you've got 18 steps, I recall, per floor. And it doesn't take very long to get down those 9 steps. As a young guy, you can do 2, 3 steps at a time. I can't remember the exact timings, but you can really fly down there if you want to. So if the girls on the stairs, that we don't want to go into detail about them, Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles, if they did go out fairly quickly after seeing the
Yeah,
assassination from the fourth floor,
they did.
um, when they go to access the stairwell, they're only going to be able to see the 9 steps going up halfway to floor 5 and the 9 steps going down halfway to floor 3. So you're only talking about a window of opportunity to see of maybe 9 or 10 seconds, something like that. So it's a very small window. I wouldn't rule out. I don't know what your thoughts are, and you did say that it wasn't something you wanted to go into in detail, but I would say Oswald could have easily beat them to it. Yeah.
But what's the evidence that any assassin was running down the stairs at that point? Why do you keep saying that someone was on the stairs? What's the evidence of that?
Okay, well, there are 2 things. One is that it's based upon the assumption that no one found an assassin, no one apprehended anyone or found someone hiding away in the building. Therefore, they must have got out fairly quickly. And the second point is that the evidence points to Oswald as the assassin, and he was seen approximately 75 to 90 seconds later after the last shot in the second floor lunchroom lobby area. So therefore, he had to go down the stairs because the elevators were down on the first or the second floor, weren't they?
What again, but what's the evidence that the shooter was on those stairs in those 90 seconds? There is none. There is
No,
no.
it's you can call it common sense, you can call it logic, you can call it rational, but he didn't beam down there. So he had to use his legs to get down the stairs. The assassin, if it was
Again,
Oswald, he
you
had to go down
you
the stairs.
you keep placing him on the stairs. What's the evidence that anyone was on those stairs in those 90 seconds after the shooting? There's no evidence of that.
That's not really that important. There is a very little. That most murderers, for example, are not filmed or seen in their act. Okay, so why would you expect there to be any evidence? As in what are you defining as evidence? Let me try and do it for you. It's either a film, a photograph, or a direct witness account, or possibly hearing someone plodding down those stairs. That would be evidence. So if you don't have anyone on the stairs or near them, you're not going to have a co-worker see whoever went down from the sixth floor to the second floor. They're not going to be seen. So why would you expect evidence to exist?
So
It's based upon the supposition that in order to get from the sixth floor to the second floor and out of the building, you have to use the stairs if the elevators aren't available. Yeah.
yeah. So we have evidence that a shooter was shooting from the window. We agree on that. Uh, as I said, witnesses saw a man running out of the building shortly thereafter. And but again, I just don't see any evidence that anyone was on the stairs in those 90 seconds. I think the shooter got out, but there's no evidence that he was on the stairs or anyone was on the stairs.
How
Uh,
did they get out then, Matt?
I don't really care about how the assassin got out. It's the burden of proof is on the Warren Commission for putting Oswald on those stairs, and there's no evidence that he or anyone was on those stairs in the 90 seconds. And we
Well,
have well, Victoria Adams and Sandra. Victoria Adams said that they ran down the stairs, quote, immediately after the shooting, and they didn't hear anybody. And her and Sandra Stiles and Dorothy Garner just sat there. She didn't go down the stairs with them. The three of them went, and then the two of them go down the stairs, and Dorothy Garner just stands there, and she could see, who was going down or up the stairs. She didn't see Oswald at all, at all.
right. So the girls watch the limousine disappear under the overpass. Yeah. So that's frame 486, about, let's say, 10 seconds after the shots.
Eight,
So
10 seconds. Yeah.
10 seconds. So the couple of young girls just witnessed a terrible thing. They're probably going to be quite shocked. Do you not think they're going to turn to each other and say, "What on earth is happening? Like, what's going on?" Rather than running immediately out of their office by the window and down the stairs. And Matt, if they did that, if they did go immediately, they've got a head start on Oswald. They'd have beaten him to it. So you're talking about an amount of time between seeing the shots, watching the limo disappear, 10 seconds, and then maybe something like half a minute to discuss what's going on, 40, 50 seconds. It's at about that time that they would have seen Oswald, only for a window of 10 seconds. So they have to coincide with each other for about 10 seconds. That's what needs to happen for you to be right, that they would have seen Oswald had he been going down the stairs. And I don't think you can really get anywhere with that argument. I think it's a weak argument. They could have easily beaten each other to it. The girls could have been faster, Oswald could have been faster. And you're shaking your head, but you've no option. You only have about a 10-second window in which any two human beings overlap to see each other.
Once again, like I said before, how do you know there was anyone running down the stairs from the sixth floor at that time?
Because the only other option was the elevator, and there was no stranger found in the building.
The the African American guys underneath the sixth floor window said they didn't hear anyone uh running. So and the girls on the stairs did not see Oswald hurling past, and they didn't hear anyone on the stairs at all. They creak a lot. You were on.
Okay, so
Hold on one second. And so I think the assassin was just up there for a little bit and then exited the building and was seen running away by people. I don't think
okay,
there's zero evidence that any assassin was running down the stairs from the sixth floor in the 90 seconds after the shooting. There is no evidence. Jerry Dealey says something crazy. He says, quote, well, if Oswald was trying to be quiet while running down the stairs,
yeah.
this is the grossest kind of presuppositionalism that I've ever seen. I mean, how
Okay,
can
but do you have a point? That's a person's opinion
I
that they
know
would.
it
be
just
trying not to make much noise. I think, it
it's
would have
just
been pretty loud. Some of the windows were open. There was chaos outside. There was a lot going on. You could hear, like, you go down any old. Well, my house was built in 1906. It's an Edwardian property. It's got hardwood floor and stairs, which I've renovated. And every time I go down the stairs, they squeak. Sure, but
exactly. And what's crazy is that was it Steve Rowe or someone said something crazy like, well, they didn't hear Oswald running down the stairs because of the clanking of their high heels. Because of the
okay.
clank of their high heels. I mean that plus, oh well, maybe Oswald was trying to be quiet. This is just to me, this is just crazy. This
Well, nobody's
trying to
perfect,
make it
and
work. Trying
those
to
guys are two guys of many who've done a huge amount of very diligent work. So
I mean,
let's not forget that. So okay,
it's
they've
like
made a
saying
couple of comments that you think are kind of funny, but
it's
yeah, I think that
desperation time is what is what I call
the
it.
idea that the girls didn't hear anyone going down the stairs doesn't mean that somebody wasn't on the stairs. That would be my take on that. With all that going on, and remember, that it's a recollection of theirs that they left, or one of the girls, I can't remember which one, said they left immediately. The other possibly disagreed. So unless they did leave immediately, if they left about a minute after the shots, then they're not going to hear anyone going down the stairs. If it was Oswald who was the assassin, because he was already down approaching the second floor lunchroom by a minute, no doubt about that.
Again, why do you think Oswald was running down the stairs? Again, this is what I keep.
Because the evidence shows that Oswald was the shooter, and the evidence tells us that Oswald was on the second floor about 75. Baker encountered Oswald about a minute and a half after the shots, Matt. Yeah. And
What's the
he couldn't use the elevator, could he? So he used the stairs. I, I,
and
I don't
Dorothy
think
Garner?
it's something that I don't think it's going to be of much interest to listeners and viewers if we dwell upon this subject, that because nobody saw or took a picture of the assassin on the stairs, that the assassin, whoever he was, didn't use the stairs. I think we should move on if that's all right.
No, I'm just saying, but like I think people, as I said, I think people miss the point is that there. You said that the evidence points to Oswald being the shooter. I know we talked about that in round one, but it's like, what? Why do you think? We know Oswald's on the second floor, seen on the second floor 74, 78 seconds after the shooting.
Yeah.
What's the evidence that he was here and that he ran down the stairs? Could you just tell me what the evidence is? Because I don't see any.
You don't see any.
There's no evidence other than that his rifle was used. And when I say that, I literally mean no evidence.
Well, I think it depends upon how you look at the way that a prosecution or an investigator would look at piecing together pieces of evidence, and evidence includes circumstantial evidence, and it includes logic and deduction around how people move from A to B, for example. So we have a whole list, don't we, of points of guilt that, without going into the same old details, going back to the Walker shooting, we know that Oswald was capable of taking a life, that he bought a rifle to try and kill an army general stroke politician in Dallas.
I'm
I
just
mean,
talking
let's not
about
go into, I mean, okay, you might dispute that it was him, but
I'm just talking
anyway,
about from just we know a shooter was up here. We know Oswald was on the lower floor 70 something seconds afterwards. But just
yeah.
what's the evidence that it was him or anyone who was going down those stairs? Or specifically him? What's the evidence that he was on those stairs or up
But
there in the first place? What is the evidence?
the evidence is that he was stopped about a minute and a half after the shots in the lunchroom.
I agree with that, but
and that the weapon used was Oswald's, and that he took it to work that day to kill Kennedy. That's the two large pieces of evidence. Now, you can disagree with that, but it doesn't change the fact that if you're putting someone else up there, that they didn't use the stairs. So all you can say is that I don't. This is you speaking. I don't think Oswald killed Kennedy. I think he was on the in the lunchroom. Someone else killed Kennedy, and they escaped.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and that they didn't use the stairs from the time of the shots to the time that Oswald was seen in the second floor lunchroom. But my question would be to you then: how did they get out and when?
so as I said, the person was seen running out of the depository. I don't care about how they got out of the building. We just know that they got out of the building and that they were shooting from the window. Like I said, I think that's like a tangent. Like, well, how did they get out? But we know they did, and we know they were shooting from the window. But I just want to ask you just one more time. What's the evidence that Oswald was shooting in the window and then ran down those stairs? Because I just don't see any. Because
Okay, well, if you could accept then that there's a case to be made for Oswald being the shooter, irrespective of his egress or his exit from the building, that therefore he must have somehow got from the sixth floor window to get out of the building, and that the only way he could do that was to use the stairs. Man, that's pure logic and pure
but
common sense.
but
And
you
he didn't beam down there. He didn't use the fire escape. The only way he could get out quickly was to use the stairs. So it's a deduction based on common sense. The
no,
lack of film or photograph of eyewitness testimony seeing him on the stairs doesn't mean to say he didn't use the stairs. It's like telling me there's no evidence, Patrick, that you got up and answered your front door to take a package from UPS because you can't, and that you didn't use the stairs because no one saw you on the stairs.
I
That's
just
just
I just
totally illogical.
I just asked you what's the evidence he was the shooter running down the stairs, and you responded with he was running down the stairs. You're not answering
No,
the
you
question.
you asked me what's the evidence he ran down the stairs.
Yeah, what's the
And you've
evidence?
asked me that about 10 times, and we're not getting anywhere with it. The only way he could have got down to the second floor, if he were the assassin, was to use the stairs.
What's the evidence he was in the window shooting? He was that shooter.
Oh, there's a huge amount of evidence. There's the fingerprints on the boxes that he prepared the sniper's nest. There's the lack of evidence that anyone else was up there. Even if he was preparing the sniper's nest for someone else, that someone else would have been up there, might have been seen by someone like Bonnie Ray Williams. He didn't see anyone. He didn't see any strangers. Yeah. So that's a big hurdle for you. What's the evidence for you to support a stranger, shooting Kennedy?
I think I laid that out with the nitrates and everything. And you mentioned the prints on the boxes. Those are
Hmm.
old. Those are old prints.
Well, without getting into too much detail, one of the FBI, I don't know if it was deputy director or director, he has an autobiography. And I'm not sure if his claim was true, but the powder that they used, don't quote me on this because it's a while back, but his contention was that the method that they used for the fingerprints showed that they were recent, as in only a few hours old. Now, anyway, let's move on from that. You're saying that the fingerprints were old. How do you? How, it's very strange, isn't it, that the prints were right on the top right hand box by that window.
Like
Yeah.
you watch my debate with uh, Scott Mosley where I debunked the fingerprints on the boxes in the sniper's nest?
Yes, I did see the debate. Yeah.
Well,
I'm not, that what you're trying to do is to say, in a sense, is that the fingerprints don't prove anything. But what the fingerprints do is they support and they join a series of dots together. That Lee Harvey Oswald was involved in creating a screen using those boxes. Why would he do that?
Why did he create the sniper's nest?
Yeah.
He didn't create the sniper's nest.
Oh, well, how do you know?
No one created the sniper's nest. The stack of boxes and everything, that was already there. And that's in
Yeah,
David
okay.
book.
Yeah.
That's in David Bellin's book. So people, everyone's always, the mainstream media, everyone's like, oh, Oswald constructed the sniper's nest. No, he didn't. Even in David Bellin's book, he writes that paradoxically, that the shield of boxes, that was already there. All they had to do was put the box for the gun rest.
Yeah,
And,
sure.
and
Well,
there's no,
I'm talking about the smaller boxes that act as a rest. Yes, I accept that
oh, I can
the
debunk that easily. So,
well, the sixth floor workers had stacked those boxes along that southeastern edge, hadn't they? And whoever the assassin was might have moved a few of the boxes slightly to make sure that they could get in and out quickly.
and I've
But
done
yeah, I mean, they were largely created before, but it's the prints on the small boxes that would be used as a rest, which is indicative that it was Oswald who made who was the shooter based upon the presence of prints on the smaller boxes.
I can debunk that using the Warner port. I can debunk that using the Warner port. Okay.
You got the page handy, have you?
Yes, sir. I mean, this is just one of those things where you can go right to the Warner port itself, and it debunks itself. So the commission, Warner port admitted that the key box at the window used as the gun rest, as well as the box below it, quote, contained no prints which could be identified as those of Lee Harvey Oswald. That's page 140. Now, this is significant, but one box and another nearby did have Oswald's prints, but as we know, Oswald did work in the building. In their own words, quote, the commission considered the possibility that Oswald handled these cartons as part of his normal duties. That's page 141. And
Yeah.
only one of these prints, one of these prints, only one of these prints was less than 3 days old. That's page 141 of this report. And it says the commission admitted that this print, quote, could have been placed on the carton at any time within this period. That's the same page. And what did they ultimately say? Quote, the prints do not establish the exact time Oswald, was there. So, like I,
So
it debunks itself. It boils down to one print. It's less than 3 days old, and that's where he worked. I mean, my prints are all over my work.
I didn't say that the prints themselves proved anything. I said that the presence of a print, particularly on that. Looking at the picture now, it's the top smaller box of the three. You've got one on the ground, one on top of it, and one resting against the window ledge. Don't you think it's quite a coincidence that you've got those prints on those two corners, as if someone were moving the box like that? But it doesn't prove anything in itself. It's just part of the jigsaw puzzle, isn't it?
Only one
Yeah.
print on one of these boxes was less than 3 days old. So it doesn't mean anything. So your whole case about that the I asked for evidence of why Oswald was in the window. You said the box, but as I said, it boils down to one print.
Well, we only got as far as a couple of items. I mean, I'm not going to sit down and list all 50 points of guilt from Bugliosi. We've not got the time to do that. But it's his gun is the murder weapon. He takes it. The evidence is that he took it into work that morning. He made a special trip to go and get it on the Thursday night. There was no talk of he arrived unannounced. There was no previous talk of curtain rods, which indicates that he lied. Why did he lie? Why didn't he just say, and this is an important point, I think, when Oswald asked Frazier, could he get a ride home on the Thursday? And this is one of the points that I'm adding to in responding to your question about what is the evidence. If he just needed to go and talk to his wife, Why didn't he just say, "Oh, I've got some stuff I need to collect from Marina. I've got a document I want her to sign. I'm going to the bank on the Friday to take out a loan or something." But no, he deliberately drops into the conversation that he's going out there on the Thursday to collect some curtain rods. So he's prepping Frazier for there being a package. Would you agree?
There's a package, but I don't think it was a gun, and that's I
Okay. Well, what was it then? A great big long sandwich bag? Because then he changed his mind for the police. He said, "No, I took my lunch into work," and I difficult one because maybe he could have made a sandwich from something in the refrigerator and there left no evidence. But as far as I think Marina and Ruth Payne were
why
concerned,
do
there was nothing to indicate that Lee had made any food that morning. I mean,
you think it was, why do you think it was a long package?
sorry.
Why do you think it was a long package?
Well, I think Linny May Randall said the way he held it, it went right down to the ground, didn't it? And he held it in his hand up against the start of his jacket sleeve. So, it's at least two. How long's an average man's leg? 2.5, 3 feet,
It
something
was
like
like
that.
you said it was like 27 inches. That's not long.
Well,
It's
maybe she was wrong. Maybe it was 38 inches and she just underestimated it.
all right.
So he took a package to work. Yeah. He didn't need curtain rods. He went out the night before Kennedy's visit to collect something. He had a rifle. He owned a rifle. He didn't keep it in his rooming house. He didn't have some kind of safe deposit box or anything. So all his belongings were with Marina in the garage, weren't they? As far as we know. Why would it be anywhere else? So I think the evidence is quite strong that he took the weapon to work. So why did he do that? To shoot at the president. You could argue he had a plan with someone else to deliberately shoot and miss the president, and that someone else actually shot the president, and Lee realized his predicament. But there's no evidence of anyone else being in the building at that time, no strangers, no evidence, not necessarily, not that you would necessarily expect it, no evidence that that week that Lee met with people. I think he was at his rooming house, wasn't he? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
But the
As far
nitrate.
as we know, I
What
don't
about,
think he went out.
did you want to touch real quickly on what we talked about last time on the nitrates? How you found something or what? So,
Yeah, I mean, it was caught of
so, so,
testified for the Warren Commission to say
so
that he wouldn't expect nitrates on the face, and that one of his agents fired the carcano and tested negative on the face thereafter, immediately after. That's in the Warren Commission, isn't it? And you were talking about
that's what
you
I was
said that
talking
a
about.
whole
That's what
bunch.
I was talking about. That's what I was talking about. I can't believe this. No, there's only one time that they tested negative. That's this what I described in round one. How someone's helping him loading the clip in.
Yeah.
Someone's clean it off, and they do this. That's the only to make it work. To not get nitrates on the cheek, you have to do this. Someone's holding the gun for you, and someone's pushing the clip in for you, and everything. So if Oswald is so at best, you could say Oswald's firing and someone's helping him. You don't believe that.
No, I don't think it goes.
Okay, so
I don't think
so
that your argument is convincing that Oswald was not the shooter because he tested negative on the face. That's the crux of the matter. You're
but
trying to make it instrumental and proof positive that a negative test means that Oswald wasn't the assassin of President Kennedy. I think that's a very weak argument.
the only as I said, the only way they did not get nitrates on the face was to have two people do it. So if someone's helping him fire this gun, load it and fire it, that means that someone that there has to be a conspiracy.
No, it doesn't.
So why did Oswald not have nitrates on his face?
Well, what you just said is that you're claiming it's proof that there was a conspiracy because someone else. Okay, how about if Oswald used an old sock or a handkerchief to put the clip in? There goes your proof, doesn't it, Matt?
there's no evidence that's what he did. That's the thing.
Well, why would you expect there to be evidence? Most guys have a
That's
handkerchief
not that's a
in their
big
pocket.
that's the biggest excuse I ever heard. That's trying
No,
to
it isn't the biggest. No, it isn't the biggest. Just calm down and think about this logically. You're
I'm
saying that the
calm.
clip, let me finish. You're saying that it was the clip that caused the nitrate test to be positive, and that if Oswald handled the clip, he should have been positive, but he didn't test positive on the taste on the face because someone else handled the clip. Seem to be ruling out that the nitrates could come from gases emitted from the rifle, which is what Cunningham was talking about, and he ruled it out in his opinion, didn't he? Say wouldn't expect that. So what you're narrowing it down not to the gases emitted from the chamber on firing the weapon, but in connection with the clip itself. Is that right?
So I don't really care about the clip or this or that. The fact is
Well,
that
you have to care about it because
fact
that's your point. That's your central point.
the central point is that if you fire that rifle, you get nitrates on your face. Oswald did not have nitrates on his face
Yeah, and neither did the FBI agent that Cunningham referred to.
because someone helped him. So yeah, that's the only way to not get
Yeah,
nitrates.
yeah,
I think we're going around in circles. I think
yeah. But it isn't the only way, is it, Matt?
I think but
You could
Cunningham lied. He said I wouldn't expect to find nitrates on the face when every single test he did, except the one where someone was helping him, got nitrates on the face. So Cunningham lied when he said, "Oh, I wouldn't expect nitrates on the face," when every
Mhm.
test they did got nitrates on the face, except
Okay,
for
well, maybe at a later date you can come up with the whole bunch of agents who fired and tested positive with the rifle.
that's in the record. That's in the record.
Okay, and
I don't
you
have it
know
handy, but I can send it to you.
how many of them? But bear in mind that we last time we talked about this, I said, it's not proof that Oswald wasn't the assassin. You might need to do it 20 times. You might get one negative. You might get 19 positives. But that if you can get one negative, then it flies in the face of your argument that the nitrate test proves that Oswald wasn't the assassin, which is what you're trying to say.
It doesn't. I would revise it and say it proves that there was a conspiracy because as I've said, if someone's helping him, look. Anyway, we're
Yes,
going.
okay.
Let's move on because we already talked about that. Let's move on. But you have time. What do you think about this? So, buried in the Warren Commission's 26 volumes of testimony and exhibits, we find an FBI report signed by J. Edgar Hoover to Chief Curry, dated November 23rd, 1963, and
Yeah.
this is buried deep in volume 24, pages 262 to 264. So let me read this just real quickly. Page 4 says the Dallas police and the FBI both failed to produce prints of sufficient legibility for comparison purposes. Page 5, quote, no latent prints of value were developed on Oswald's revolver, the cartridge cases, the unfired cartridge, the clip in the rifle, or the inner parts of the rifle. End quote. So, I mean, the FBI is admitting the day after the assassination that they have no fingerprints on either weapon Oswald allegedly used. I'm just going to say it. Oswald should have been released immediately
What, based upon a lack of prints?
based on what I just said
Why should he have been released immediately?
because there's no evidence.
He owned the murder weapon. He worked in the building from which the shots were fired, and he fled the scene.
That's the thing. You said that his exit from the building proves that he's guilty.
No, I didn't.
I have it in my notes. You said that I have it right here. You said exit from exit. This is one of the things that you said. Exit from the building. You used that as you said something about 30 minutes ago about some time ago about how that proves that he was
No, you misinterpreted what I'm saying.
okay.
I'm making a list of points that support that he was the assassin, in that he exited the building quickly. You know, murderers do try and escape from a murder scene. It's not evidence that he was the assassin. It's just part of a whole series of events which points to Oswald being guilty beyond reasonable doubt. I also stated to you last time that he could have exited the building quickly, having realised he was framed. So exiting the building per se doesn't make him the assassin, and it's not proof of anything. No.
So let's
So,
talk
but why should Oswald have been released immediately? Because there were no prints.
because there's no evidence. And when I say that, I mean that with every fiber of my being. There is literally no evidence that places him in that window. That's how I feel.
I totally disagree with you.
All right. So do you
I mean,
think
the evidence that you're looking for is a film or a colleague's ID. Yeah.
if there were fingerprints on the rifle, if there were fresh fingerprints on the boxes, if someone could positively identify him shooting from the window, if someone had seen him running down the building, if someone had seen him, all this stuff, if if there were no grassy knoll witnesses, if there were no smoke witnesses, if there were none of that, then yeah, I would say Oswald did it. But I'm just following the evidence where it leads, and nothing points to Oswald. But anyway, let's move on. You said you think he fled the building. All right, we're
Yeah.
going into my favorite part now. So you think he fled the building? So okay, so Oswald takes a cab, gets on a bus, gets on a cab, goes to his rooming house, and what do you think happened next?
What do I think happened next? Well, I've read the same material as you, so if we have a different take on it, um, fair enough. But I think he's moving quickly. He goes in. He doesn't say to the housekeeper anything about the president being shot. How is the president? Did you know the president's been shot? I'm not aware of any conversation at all. He goes into his little room and he's in there for a few minutes. That's been disputed in terms of how long it is. I would say it could have been as little as 2 minutes. It might have been 3 or 4 minutes. How long would it take a young guy to go into his bedroom, grab a jacket, take maybe a shirt off? Maybe he's got two shirts on. I don't know. He's got the brown shirt with a white t-shirt underneath. That's all he's got on. He left his jacket at work, didn't he? So he's just got to put a jacket on. He's not changed his trousers, pants, or shoes, and he's got to get his revolver out of a drawer, get some ammunition. I think he's going to be in there for 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Because my counterpart, Mr. Bill Brown, he realizes that's a problem. So he's convinced himself in his own mind that he was in there just a few seconds, literally just a few seconds, just long enough to just grab a jacket.
Yeah,
Leave.
I mean, it's possible, but I think it's unlikely. But
He,
where are we going with it? Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to establish a timeline that starts to put pressure on the argument that Oswald could have got to the Tippit scene. So
oh, I
are
can,
we in time? He's so the landlady is what she's got the
housekeeper.
television on. She's expecting some soap. I don't know what it was, and then so she's turned the television on just before 1 o'clock. Is that right? In
One,
expectation that she's going to
one,
get her soap, and she's had a call from a friend to say turn the television on. The president's been shot. So that's all happening very quickly. So she's got the TV on by 1 o'clock, and Oswald comes in. So maybe he got there at 2 minutes to one. He's in there for 4 minutes. Maybe he left at 2 minutes past one or whatever. You still only need about 10 or 11 minutes to get to Patton and 10th, where Tippit was shot, with zero point 0.9 miles away.
Mhm.
And if you're tight on timing because you say if you just walk it, it takes you 12 or 13 minutes, I would say, well, the counter argument to that is Oswald didn't just walk, he jogged. Certainly jogged across corners. You wouldn't have the fencing that you had in those that you might have now, and people's backyards are more secure. You could cut across corners. You might jog across the road as you're crossing. Um, so I don't really see the timing. I know it's a big bugbear of yours. I don't really see the timing as being an issue.
Yeah.
And you've talked about this extensively with Bill Brown, of course. Was there something about this that you wanted my opinion on, which is a slightly different subject area, based upon the fact that I spent a lot of time with Larry Harris in 1980,
That's where I wanted
because
to,
he was the resident Tippit expert.
yeah, that's where I wanted to ask you about as well. But first of all, my personal timing from the leaving the depository at 12:33 to getting to the rooming house, my personal time, Oswald gets there but arrives between 104 and 106, but I am completely willing to concede the Warren Report's claim that he arrived there at 1 on the dot
Okay.
and that he left at 103.
Okay.
So, but what I always harp on folks is that people think that um, people think he immediately walked to the crime scene, but that's not true, as you know.
No. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And we've got him hovering outside by the bus stop for anything from 30 seconds to a few minutes. But um, I think if you take a step back and look at the wider picture, Oswald lives quite close to the area where Tippit was killed. It was very unusual for a policeman to be killed about one per year in Dallas, sadly, at that period of time. So obviously, this is me being a little bit irrational. It's not surprising that perhaps the two events were connected, which doesn't really mean an awful lot. But um, so where we're going with this is, what route did Oswald take? And we can look at a map, and I can have him going down Denver and cutting across. So he would appear to Tippit to be walking west. We've talked about, and you've talked to many people about this, that he could have been walking east, which would have been the more direct route, and then done a U-turn because he saw another cop car in the distance. I don't know. I can't answer those questions. And neither, by the way, getting on to our Mr. Larry Harris, neither could Larry. The answer to almost all of my questions was, that's a good question. And I know he's a bit of a hero to you, but I don't honestly think, as I can recall, he wasn't convincing that he had any. What he had was a case that he could make that Oswald wasn't a shooter. But he never, as far as I can recall, came up with a different scenario with another person, other than saying that perhaps he could accept that Oswald was with someone, which I don't suppose you can rule out. Most of the people who saw the young man fleeing the scene said that he was alone. Um, you posted a list of about 12 points on your forum regarding the Tippit shooting, and you had
Oh yeah.
quite a few witnesses who you say did not.
You said it was not Oswald.
It said it was not Oswald, but Bill Brown was quite adamant. Bill Brown, of course, being a Tippit um, researcher and having considerable expertise, that there wasn't a single person who said it wasn't Oswald.
Well, he's wrong about that, and I've hammered
Okay,
that hard to him. And I mean, Mrs. Clemens, Frank Wright, Mrs. Higgins, Jim Burt, and anonymous witness. So, I mean,
okay,
he's convinced himself that these people didn't weren't real witnesses. But so you knew Larry Ray Harris, didn't you?
yeah, I did, yes. And you've got a photograph or two of me with him, haven't you?
Yeah, I do. I'll insert it right here. That's pretty amazing. So obviously he gave you a tour of the Tippit crime scene, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, man, I'm so jealous that you got to see 10th and Patton how it used to be.
Yeah.
It's completely different right now.
It would seem so from the photographs that I've seen. Yes. I mean, it was a relatively sparse, underdeveloped area with just, I don't recall any tall buildings, just one-story bungalow type buildings, as we would call them, a couple of two-story houses, quite empty, just very suburban, not much going on.
Thank you for
And that,
sending me the picture that you took at the crime scene. I'll put it right here so people can see. That's
yeah.
really amazing. We don't have a whole lot of photos at the crime scene except for the black and white ones published by the FBI. But anyway, so what was Larry Harris like? You met him, and tell us about him.
What was he like? Um, well, he was eccentric. Um, he was a little bit distant, a little bit aloof, quietly confident, but he wasn't a chatterbox. He was obsessed with the Kennedy assassination. He was fascinated by the Tippit case. He'd got some furniture from the book depository that he'd bought it to, I don't know, some kind of auction or something. He'd got like a coffee table, a couple of chairs from the lunchroom.
Wow.
He had a small, humble apartment with about 100 books on the Kennedy assassination. He spent most of his spare time going over and over and over the books, the papers, media stuff, material relating to witnesses. He knocked on doors, took me with him. We went door knocking to visit some of the people that he had established who were still living in the vicinity, who
Wow.
had been there on that day or were residents on that day, with
Wow.
the aim to try and find somebody who would come up with something new and say, look, I've been quiet about this, but I actually saw Oswald, or I actually saw a different guy. I don't recall us coming up with anything new, I'm afraid. I don't recall there being anything there that made me think, wow, this is something that we've not heard before. For example, um, I saw Lee Harvey Oswald getting out of a car, or I saw Lee Harvey Oswald on a kid's bike, or something like that. There was nothing that turned up. And I think when I met Larry, he was probably in the early days of his interest because I've seen film of him and have read stuff that he produced later, um, perhaps 89, 1990, something like that, that shows evidence of a greater amount of research and work on his part. But I was at the time, remember, I thought there probably had been a small conspiracy. I didn't find the Tippit case that interesting, actually. I thought it was a bit of a slam dunk that, yeah, Oswald probably killed Tippit, but not necessarily because he killed the president, but because he was involved in some way. That was my thinking at the time. Mary Ferrell, I spent a lot of time with, probably more time, found Larry to be young and a bit eccentric. He had a slight weirdness about him, which might sound unkind. I don't mean it to be. He was quite unusual. Um, he was a bit geeky, but he did have a presence about him. He had a sort of a confidence, and he really knew his stuff. But in summary, he never, as I recall, never once came up with a scenario that said, "Hey, Patrick, this is what I think might have happened." He was just very focused on trying to make a case that it wasn't Oswald. That was his main focus. So I think, to leave it with you to ponder, I think he thought someone else killed Tippit. And at the time, I do remember him talking about Tippit having a potential affair, or that the shooting might not have had anything at all to do with Kennedy assassination. Yeah, which is interesting.
You told me
And
one time that you said something like, "Oh, I drank a lot of American beers with Larry when we talked about the Tippit case and the candy case.
Yeah, if you add up all the visits, yeah, I don't think back then. Well, I was a bit of a lightweight. I don't think I'd be drinking more than two or three per night of the 2.5% ones. Not back in the day, but yeah, just
So you
a
thought
figure of.
so you thought Oswald shot Tippit. He did not. Would you challenge him, or did you ever say, well, you know what I mean? Did you ever friendly challenge him? Well, Larry, what about this, or what about that, or what about this? And how would he respond to you?
Yeah, I would say that I would say that I think the evidence shows that Tippit was killed by Oswald because he owned the murder weapon. And then you have the shells being found at the scene, the same old stuff that you and I have talked about and that you talked about to other people. And he would have the same counter arguments as you and people like John Iacoletti, who comments on the Tippit shooting a lot. That you can't tie the bullets to the revolver because the bullets were too mangled, but you can tie the shells to the revolver and you can tie the shells to the bullets. There's a mismatch. Remington Peters, Winchester Wesson, they don't quite add up. Maybe there was a fifth shot before. Maybe someone stole or picked up one of the shell cases. There is a number mismatch that is. We talked about that, and of course, the Warren Commission explained the possibilities around how to explain that, but. I don't think he took the view that you couldn't make a case that. I think he agreed that there was not much doubt that the revolver was the murder weapon, and I do recall him saying, "Okay, well, then how did it get from the the shooter to Oswald if he wasn't the shooter?" And I don't recall hearing anything convincing on that basis. And I suppose that would be my main argument is that Oswald was arrested with the murder weapon. And if you think otherwise, it implicates the Dallas Police Department massively in framing Oswald. And I do recall talking to Larry about that, saying, okay, so it wasn't Oswald. Oswald wasn't connected. How did he end up with the revolver? And he would say, well, perhaps the police um, had the revolver maybe found in the locality, picked up and swapped out with Oswald's revolver. Then I think I would probably have said, well, hang on a second. The revolver that Oswald had on him is the one that he ordered from the gun dealer in Los Angeles and is the same make and model as the revolver that appears in the backyard photographs. I don't know. I just wasn't, he wasn't very convincing.
You said he gave you a stock answer for everything every time you stumped something. What was
Yeah, he used to say that's a good question.
so
In,
like?
in other words, it's a good question that I can't answer. I think
How often did he say that? Whenever you friendly challenged him,
brought like every other question.
really?
Yeah,
He would
but
just
it's a long time ago. Give me a
say,
break. I don't want to paint a negative picture of the guy. He was very dedicated to the
so he
case, and
so he would
he was
just
very
say,
emotionally attached to it. Yeah,
so he would just say, so you would say, well, Larry, what about this? And he'd just be like, that's a good question, just like that.
it was more like, that's a very good question. Yeah, frequently.
Oh, he would say it like that. Like, was he saying it in like a condescending way? Like, that's a good question, or
No, not condescending. No, not condescending. He was genuinely acknowledging that it was a good question. I mean, so I'm a young guy, fairly academic. Don't want to sound big-headed, but I was quite tenacious and I hope logical. So I would have asked him a lot of questions. Um, and I suspect maybe I asked him questions that he'd not been asked before. I don't know. I mean, I have a big thing about how, when you look at something that happened in history and it's quite, this is an event which is very focused upon just a few people, the President of the United States, a police officer, an alleged assassin, and associations. it's not like you're looking at the Battle of Hastings or the Battle of Midway or the Battle of Waterloo or some vast event. And I remember thinking, I was always of the mindset that it's a little bit like a chess game. It happened one way. And if you look at the so-called the game of the century, when Bobby Fischer, the chess player, was only about 14 and he played a grandmaster in New York and he sacrificed his queen and one of his rooks or something, but he still won the game.
Mhm.
It only happened one way. And I say to myself sometimes, what do you have to do to change that game, to change the movements? And could you have done them in real time at that time? And I remember, and I think this is very relevant to the Tippit shooting, to make it happen a different way always struck me, even at that young age, as being very difficult to do. For example, swapping out the shells, because if it was a different weapon, then the shells needed to be swapped out. How do you get away with that, particularly with all the media being there and literally dozens and dozens of people, the cops handling the case, their families, their wives, partners? Was there ever any talk of, oh, the Dallas police framed Oswald? I was not aware of that. Things like the jacket, the jacket that was allegedly ditched by Oswald underneath the car in the Texaco garage parking lot next to the car dealership. Was that swapped out? Was that planted?
It looks
And all that sort of stuff. It's very difficult to see an alternative way of explaining what happened. I can quite accept that if Oswald was involved with the conspiracy, he might have met somebody in that area. Why it would be in the middle of nowhere, I don't know.
those are
You know,
actually,
how far is it from Jefferson Boulevard? About a quarter of a mile. Yeah,
yeah.
why would he be there with someone else in the middle of nowhere? Why would it not have been a meeting at a library or a hardware store or at the theatre, for example? I'm trying to think, why would someone else risk being with someone who was involved in the shooting of Kennedy in the middle of suburbia? I don't know. I mean, it's possible, but why?
I think the only thing necessary to cover up the Tippit murder is, I shouldn't say cover up. The only way to pin it on Oswald is to just switch out the shells. I think that's all they had to do. Just
Okay.
easy. Easy. Just switch out the shells. That's my opinion. And I think, I mean, all they have to do is go in and just switch the shells. Now, I think they clumsily switched them because the brands don't match up.
Okay, so I mean, okay, it's a fair scenario. What you're saying,
I mean,
to
I
help
went to
people
cops
who
from
are
the
maybe listening to this is that Oswald did have his Smith and Wesson revolver on him in the theatre, but it wasn't the murder weapon. Another weapon was used, and that the shells were just planted into evidence.
I think that's the only thing that had to be done. They just switch out the shells. I mean, I've talked to cops back who were from the 60s and 70s, and I just casually asked them, did you, kind of not casually asked them, I kind of approached, I was like, did you guys ever, I heard, did you guys, did you guys ever, not you,
Trade somebody, yeah.
not you personally, but like, would people sometimes on the force, switch out evidence? And they were like, "Oh hell yeah, we used to switch out evidence. We used to wrap cases up like that. Hell yeah!" And they just admitted it. They were like, "Heck yeah, that was standard, like the back of our hands. Heck yeah!" And then they always said, "You can't do that nowadays, Matt. You can't do that."
No, I mean, I obviously, being British,
So when they,
other than the fact that my brother was a naval officer and had a shotgun, my experience of weapons is very, very limited.
so
But so the revolver that Oswald owned had been rechambered, curiously enough, in Birmingham, England, about an hour's drive from where I live here in
yeah,
Nottingham. Um, so how common was it for a revolver to be rechambered? Because the reason why the bullets couldn't be matched, because they were mangled, because as they'd gone through the chamber and the barrel, they shaken around a little bit, so they didn't have the normal groovings on them. That's correct, isn't it? So they couldn't be matched. And I've said to you in the past on our forums or messenger that, to me, the fact that the bullets had been fired from a weapon that had been rechambered is rather curious, because that matches Oswald's weapon, which had been rechambered. Now, if you would say to me, well, hell, for that particular weapon, 9 out of 10 had been rechambered, I don't know the answer to that, and I've never been advised in any direction on that. But it seems to me that because Oswald's weapon was rechambered, that it tends to tie it into the bullets that were found in the body.
I don't think I've heard any conspiracy believer or critic suggest that. Did Larry ever suggest that the bullets were swapped out, or did he just think that the shells
No,
were swapped out? He just thought the
no,
shells.
I don't recall him saying anything like that about the
Yeah,
bullets. No, he would be of the view that the shells could have been swapped out, which I think is something that he wrote about, didn't he?
yeah, yeah. I've never heard anyone saying put forward that they switched the bullets, but could that happen as well? I don't know. Do I have an opinion on it? Can I prove it? No and no. I can't. I do think, as I said, that the only thing necessary to pin on Oswald is to switch out those shells, because the witness testimony is just so bad. It really is bad. I mean, it really, really is that bad.
Well, I think the witnesses established that it was one young man wearing a jacket
Yeah, no
as
one.
opposed to just the
Yeah,
shirt, but
no one disagrees. No one
does
disagrees.
that doesn't rule out Oswald, does it? So, what is your so if it wasn't Oswald, are we saying that it's totally unconnected to the Kennedy situation,
That would
which
seem
would tend to be the
that would
case?
seem that would seem to be the case, because I agree with Larry and Greg Lowery, two Dallas researchers, who, in my opinion, studied Tippit the most, knocked
Okay.
on knocked on doors and all that stuff. I agree with them that Tippit was not involved in the plot, which I agree with them. Don't think Tippit. I do not think Tippit was involved in in any conspiracy.
To kill Kennedy.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there are many people that think he was. Are there?
A lot of conspiracy believers believe that Tippit was involved. Yeah,
Okay.
silence Oswald or pick up Oswald, or was driving Roscoe White around and Oswald with them. So yeah,
Okay.
but
Sure.
airfield. But um, yeah. But anyway, you did you go through Larry's files on the Tippit case?
Yes. Yes.
Really? Did you make
Yeah.
copies or no?
No.
And
I don't. I don't have anything. I mean,
he
I can't even prove, other than providing with a few photographs, can't even prove that I was there, can I? As I've said to you, I mean, I wish I could kick myself, because at that time I had no idea I'd still be interested in the case beyond that year.
man,
It's thanks to Oliver Stone, But
did
I
he
tell you what, I do have. I do have a lot more photographs somewhere in the family belongings, be it in my roof space or my parents' belongings, which are at my brother's house in Devon in the south of England, along with things like train sets and all that. There's a whole bunch of JFK stuff down there, I'm sure, in boxes, which I will get to digging out at some point.
you need to
Yes.
find those photos? Yeah, but did he have interview transcripts in his files, or do you not remember?
Say that again.
Did he have transcripts of witness interviews that he did with witnesses? Because in Sylvia Maher's archive, he sent her about 5 pages of interview transcripts that he did with the Dallas cops over the phone or in person. So I was wondering if you saw those.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He had notes on everyone that he'd met, including neighbours' doors that he'd knocked on. Yeah,
Was all
and
that?
I remember that my first trip to Dallas, my cousin lent me a Walkman, So we had, the small cassette recording. He had that ability, and he could easily have had a Walkman on taping for every door that he knocked on, everyone who
Wow.
invited him in for a cup of coffee to say, can I talk to you about that day and what do you remember of it? Were you at home? Or perhaps it was someone whose parents had lived in the area and they'd inherited the family home. I think he taped everything and he made notes. Yeah.
Where are
I
that's
don't know. I don't know, but I don't think he ever came. To my knowledge, there was nothing apocryphal or remarkable or breakthrough. Um,
I
you know,
wonder
there
this
was
is
nothing. Say, for instance, someone had seen Oswald getting out of a car, being dropped off near 10th and Patton.
so,
Nothing like that, I'm afraid.
so everything you looked through in his files was pretty much already known.
Um, I don't think his meetings with neighbours in the area was known widely because that didn't really turn up anything.
But you read those notes and everything, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
was there anything, was there any bombshells, any new revelations, any new or any
No, no, no. If there were, I'd remember them, I'm afraid.
what
Yeah.
um did he take you to meet any Tippit witnesses?
Physically, I don't think so. No, no, because I would remember that. No.
What about Ted Calloway?
Ted, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, but no, that wasn't to do with Larry. That I met Ted Calloway because through Mary Farrell. My only claim to fame in terms of being remotely helpful in solving the Kennedy case were two things, right? One, that Detective Gus Rose, three things. Detective Gus Rose told me that the jacket they found under the car was dry. Okay. Had it been put there earlier because it was raining, rain splashes, goes under the cars. You put your jacket or sweater under a car that's when it's been raining, it'll be damp. Okay. Two, that Officer Nick MacDonald, who was part of the arresting group of policemen for Oswald in the theatre, had um, first aid on his thumb in the webbed part of our skin, flesh between your forefinger and your thumb.
So
But
you
it's not a breakthrough, but it's something that interests me. Is that Ted Calloway told me that when Oswald was across on the other side of the street, wasn't he? That he said something, he muttered something, and he told me, he said, when I saw Oswald on the television, I recognised that New Orleans accent. It's got a slight lisp to it. And I've not read that in any book. And all it means is that, well, he was sure that the man that he saw leaving the scene was Oswald. Not only was he sure, not was that was only it wasn't only based upon his identification of Oswald physically, but on recognizing his voice.
hmm,
Now, what you can take from that, I don't know. I mean,
yeah. What it's interesting were there any other Tippit witnesses that you met? Or was it just Ted Calloway?
I'm pretty sure it was just Ted Calloway. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's not something I would forget.
You mentioned the jacket. Larry was the person who, I'm sure as you know, discovered who found the jacket because in the Warren report it says that Captain Westbrook found it. I mean, it just says in the report Westbrook found it, and right in his testimony he says actually I did not find it. So it's like who
Yes,
found the jacket? And in Larry Harris's article, which I'll put up on the screen right here, he found it was John Mackey, who cop, who found
yeah.
it. Did he? But
That rings a bell, actually. I mean, he did a lot of good work for sure.
yeah, and I mean, this is what's great about Dallas research is the best. I mean, this you're gonna find the truth here in town because that's where it happened.
Yes, of course.
But what do you think about the color difference? Because there was a camera crew, of course, and I did not talk about this with Bill Brown, surprisingly, in three debates over 4 years. I can't believe I didn't mention this, but the color of the jacket that they're holding up in the news film is a white jacket. And
Yeah,
the
it's pretty white.
and the jacket that's in evidence now is a gray jacket. It's
Mm.
gray. You can see it right here. It's a gray jacket. I mean, so do you think they just, if I were to say, okay, yes, the jacket that's there now is one of Oswald's jackets.
Mm.
Okay, if I concede that, this white jacket that is on film that was found, that everyone that day said it was a white jacket on the police transcripts, white jacket, white jacket, white jacket.
Yeah.
Could they have just gotten rid of that and got Oswald's jacket and says this is the one that we found? Because if you put a side by side, the two look nothing alike. You know what I mean? So what do you think about that? I really want to get your opinion on that because I did not talk about that with Bill.
Okay. Well, certainly in the films, the pictures, well, the pictures that I've seen of the cop holding the jacket up next to where it's found, it's very light. It's like a white off white color. Um, Specifically about various recollections about the color from the witnesses, which is a different question. Doesn't surprise me at all that some people thought it was tan, some people thought it was light
Oh
blue.
yes, I
Yeah,
did a few years ago, really fast. Sorry, I did a color chart
yeah,
which shows what all the witnesses described, and it's just, woo, it's all over the place. Black all the way to light blue. It's just insane. So I think the witnesses are completely unreliable in regards to
yeah.
what color it is. But we have the jacket that was thrown, ditched, if it was, that's on film, and it's a white jacket, and that's what everyone called it that day. So what do you think about that? Sorry to cut you.
Well, I think in terms of the theoretical possibilities that the jacket was swapped out, it is a possibility. But what do I think? Well, you know that I've been to the archives. I went to the archives in 1985, and Oswald's clothing was available to researchers, and I did see the jacket and the shirt.
What
So the
color?
shirt, very dirty brown, sort of flake with a grass-like pattern, nothing like a plaid or what we would call a check shirt.
That's the
Uh,
thing.
the
That
jacket was an off-white, and it was a bit, well, it was 20 years old, wasn't it, when I saw it? And I didn't pay too much attention to it. It was a lightweight zipper jacket. I would describe it as being off-white, light grey.
I've got a million questions now. So if you were to settle on one color, what color was the jacket that you held in your hands in the archives?
Like an off-white pale grey
You see,
from memory.
that's Steve, it must have faded because the original color photograph of the jacket taken in 1963, 64
Yeah,
shows it's a gray jacket, and I can insert those images right now. This is what it's gray, but then in later years, as you did you hold it in your hands?
yeah,
Yeah.
with
So
with plastic
nowadays,
with plastic gloves.
unless they
Um, I'm just
unless they
looking at the I'm just looking at the
hold on,
Warren Commission photographic uh, pictures online. The jacket, it's a bit dirty. It's described as a grey zipper jacket.
I've got so many questions. Okay, so nowadays it looks more white, and people post the later photographs of it today and say, "Ooh, that looks like the one in the news footage of it's white." But like I said, the original color photo shows it was gray, and so I'm thinking, did it fade over time and become more light? I mean, certainly they wouldn't switch it again if they switched it in the first place. But
No, I guess I bet you're talking to the wrong person about that because I'm not that conspiracy minded about stuff like that.
no, no, I'm not
What I
talking
would
about
say,
that.
there
I'm
is
just trying to,
you know, the lady, one of the archivists on YouTube. There's a film of her talking about the evidence, and I'm looking at it now. There's a
yep.
movie of her with the jacket, and it looks like a dirty sort of grey, almost yellowing off white.
Yeah, that's
and it does look slightly sort of it doesn't look as bright and light coloured as the jacket found on that day. But look, let's be logical about this. What about other aspects of it? The fact that the size that it is, the weight of the material, that it's a zipper jacket, they all line up, don't they? So no, I think it's one and the same jacket. I
wasn't
wouldn't.
wasn't the jacket. No, it wasn't the jacket. Oh, I didn't talk about this at all with Bill Brown. I have no idea why. So we're talking about this now. I got uh Oswald wore size small, but the jacket is size medium. That's another thing. Again, this whole thing just doesn't add up. And you mentioned that he was wearing, you saw Oswald's dirty brown shirt that he was wearing, right? Under the
Yes,
jacket. But all the Tippit witnesses said the killer was wearing a light shirt.
I
So
know.
it just
Yeah,
doesn't add up. I mean, I'm no,
that's more interesting to me. If I could just get back to that thing about the jacket,
yeah, go
small
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
small versus medium. Between different brands, small, one brand's small can be another brand's medium. And all I would say to you is that Oswald almost certainly bought that. It was a bit of a designer jacket. It was an expensive jacket made in Los Angeles, wasn't it? He almost certainly got it from a thrift store, a second-hand store.
Well, that
So he didn't have the choice of small, medium, or large. He just, maybe it was a little bit big for him. Maybe
well,
it fitted him perfectly.
well, that's assuming it was his jacket, and that's assuming that he bought it, which there's no evidence of. But yeah, you're right. How the
Well, Matt, there's no evidence I bought this shirt. All I can tell you is it's an old
yeah,
Ralph Lauren shirt that I bought in
sure
Washington
there.
D.C.
So did you buy cash? Did you?
No, I probably put it on a credit card. Yeah.
Well then there is proof that you bought it. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, don't forget that, and this really annoys me when not you, but other people, you say, well, Marina identified the jacket. She said, yeah, that's Lee's jacket. And people say, oh, well, Marina couldn't have testified in court. Well, we're not in court, are we?
the
Um,
thing is that I won't even use that argument. Marina's the most unreliable witness. There's a pages and pages and pages of a report that the HSCA wrote. It's like
yeah.
dozens of pages of all the contradictions. She's the worst witness. I don't trust her on anything.
Okay.
A lot of people always say, "Oh, I really wish Marina would give interviews. I wish I could interview her." I've never thought that for 1 second because and she lives 15 minutes away from me. I
Yeah.
I don't even I've never why would I do that when she's the most worthless contradictory witness?
You've never had the inclination. But I mean, it would be interesting to meet her, wouldn't it? Just to say that you've met the first wife of the alleged assassin of President Kennedy.
I can arrange that today, but I don't care
No,
because A, she's worthless as a witness, and B,
I think what's important is that people who've committed a crime, a serious crime, and are being pursued or know they're about to be pursued by the police, by law enforcement, would typically try to change their appearance. So it's quite significant that Oswald was found without a jacket at the theatre. I don't believe that there was a jacket found in the theatre. He was just in that dirty old shirt. So I think he did discard his jacket. It doesn't mean that he killed Kennedy, but to go back to the other point about the clothing, which you brought up a few minutes ago, it is interesting, yes, that some of the witnesses who saw the man in the window thought he was wearing a light coloured shirt. That includes Brennan, yeah.
I forgot.
Did
Yeah,
Arnold Rowland say he had a light coloured shirt? Because this shirt that Oswald was arrested in is a dirty brown orange. It's quite dark.
that's something no Tippit witness described. Like I said, they all said the killer was wearing a light shirt. But I did mention this part to Bill, which never gets brought up. Mrs. Roberts, the housekeeper,
Housekeeper, yeah,
not the landlady. Everyone makes that mistake. It's okay though. It's okay.
yeah.
It's but she said Oswald was wearing a dark jacket when he left the rooming house, and every single Tippit witness said that the Tippit killer was wearing a light jacket. I shouldn't that be enough to exonerate Oswald?
No, no, it's part of the case for Oswald not being the shooter. It doesn't exonerate. No, people that aren't good, as you said yourself a few minutes ago, the number of different colours varied from black, blue to white, and light grey and khaki and all that. So we're not very good, are we, at remembering colours? And
But
we can get
but they
pants,
all
trousers mixed up with jackets. I mean, when I gave talks at the university here on the assassination, I would have curiously enough, an American friend of mine. He owned a gym, and he would come to the talks, and he'd always arrive late on my request. And he would open the door just as I'd started it and say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry I'm late," and go and walk past all the students and go and sit in the back. And I used to ask them after about 20 minutes, I said, "Right, I'm going to stop you. Remember that guy that came in late?" And they'd all look at me, "Yes." I said, "Put your hands up if you can remember what he was wearing." And the girls tend to be better than the boys at this. And then I'd say, "Okay, what color jacket was he wearing?" Blue, black, green. You know, you get a huge variety of colors. So I
Yeah,
just
that is
wouldn't
true.
read anything into it.
That is that is true, but like I said, they may not all the witnesses all the Tippit witnesses did not agree on the color, but they all
Yeah.
agree but they did all agree on the shade, that it was light. They all said it was light, and Mrs. Roberts said Oswald left his house wearing a dark jacket in all of her interviews. She said it was a dark jacket, and she was shown the jacket that's there now. And she said, "No, that's not the jacket." So I'm
Okay. Well, I
being
just have to say, the evidence shows that she was wrong. Maybe he hadn't zipped it up and she was remembering the brown shirt. I don't know. I can't answer
That's
that.
that's the other thing. Something I did not mention with man, everything I'm talking to you about Tippett, I did not mention to Bill over 3 debates. That's crazy. She said that Oswald had it zipped up his jacket,
Okay.
but the Tippett witnesses said that the jacket was, open and they could see his shirt. So again, none of this, in my opinion, it doesn't point to Oswald.
Well, a zipper jacket by default by its description can be zipped up and down. I mean, he might have unzipped it when he started walking quickly down the street, you know?
Who, who knows? But you know, 5 of the 6 witnesses could not identify Oswald's shirt that's in evidence. Five of the
Okay.
six, and 5 of the 6 witnesses could not identify the jacket that's in evidence. So it's
Okay.
like I said, none of this makes sense. None of it adds up.
Well, if you were to look at murder cases and examine some police records of witnesses identifying clothing, I'm sure you would find that there was a clear pattern that witnesses would vary considerably on shading and types of clothing and be mistaken more often than not. I wouldn't really read too much into it.
It's
The
like,
fact is that
sorry, go on.
Oswald, the Tippit killer, and the man seen fleeing the scene with a revolver was wearing a jacket. Young white man wearing a jacket. Oswald's arrested in the theatre without a jacket, and a jacket's found midway between the murder scene and where he was arrested at the theatre. It's not mysterious to me. It's fairly clear.
I'm just saying, this is what drives me nuts is that, in the Kennedy case, things add up, in my opinion, or seem to add up. Um, but and you got the viewers can refer back to our first debate, round one. But with the Tippett case, it if it was Oswald, it would point towards him, and it just doesn't. Nothing. I'm just saying it would add up if it was him, and it just doesn't for Tippett.
Well, it doesn't add up for you. It certainly does add up for me and a lot of other people. But if it doesn't add up to you, then that's the way it is, and we've discussed it enough for me to know that if it doesn't add up now, it's never going to add up because there's nothing much more that, particularly people like Bill Brown, have said to you. Much more detail. Um, it's a case about how you interpret the evidence. So what I'm saying to you is that it doesn't surprise me at all that there was differences in what type, what color the jacket was. So that's not something that doesn't add up. It adds up perfectly to me, illustrated by the point that you acknowledge that you got a whole bunch of witnesses and the number of colors that they remembered varied. That's proof
I think
perfect that
I've
people aren't good at remembering the color of some items of clothing.
I've recently come to the stark conclusion that I don't tr I can't rely on any of the Tippit witnesses. There were 21 Tippit witnesses. 21. Everyone talks about the 12 that are mentioned in the Warren Commission. A little joke there. But there are actually 21 witnesses. And I tallied this. Like, when did I tally this? I tallied this like in December or maybe before. Five said it wasn't Oswald. Seven refused to identify Oswald. Four said it was Oswald. Four are worthless. Two are useless. And three are kind of suspect. It's that bad. The witness testimony is that bad in the Tippit case. And I've recently come to the conclusion that this is a timing and ballistics case for Tippit. I
Okay.
You cannot rely on any of the eyewitnesses. It is that bad.
Well, I think you have six or seven people who were pretty clear that it was Oswald. Yes, you can make a
Four.
case that they were mistaken. Okay, four. Yeah, I mean, it's more about the ballistics, isn't it? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And the timing. And the timing. Unless you want to say Oswald was driven to the scene. But but I mean, it just doesn't add up. But going back really quickly to the color of the jacket. So do you think it could have faded by the time you saw it? And I mean, obviously it's faded now, according to the recent photos of it
Yeah,
online. Do you think it's faded? Because, like I said, the original color photograph of it taken is gray. So, do you think it could have faded over the years?
changed color. Some, some, some materials get lighter, some get darker. It looks in the original photographs taken on that day lighter than the one in the archives, but I think yes, it's the same
Well, the
jacket
ones,
because, and it could be matched photographically by virtue of the measurements of the sleeves, the shape, the zips, the pockets, the collar, etc. I don't doubt that it's not
well,
the same. It is the same jacket. I don't think it's an issue.
that's assuming that it's obvious to me, it's obviously not the jacket that's on film that they're holding up again.
Okay.
But I
Well,
mean,
why? Just based upon the color that you've agreed that it could fade or get darker or get lighter. Doesn't
yes,
that contradict? Are you not
yeah.
contradicting yourself there?
Everyone that day said it was white. All the police officers aren't going to be mistaken on that. Sylvia Marr wrote about that as well. Mentioned that
They're a bunch of guys. They're not going to, white, off white, slightly white.
they said it was white. They said it was white, and this is a gray jacket. And I think Myers realized this. He's like, "Oh
Okay.
shoot, the evidence Oswald's jacket is gray, and the actual jacket ditched by the actual killer is white." And Myers edited the original color photo and made it lighter. I called him out on this. I don't care if he's going to sue me for saying that, but he seems to me that he realized that problem and he edited the color photo to make it lighter. And I can put a comparison right here. I don't know. That's just
Yeah, but you have accepted that the color could change over time, and it's locked away in a vault where it doesn't get natural sunlight and
he
rarely
changed
gets
the
drawn
original
out.
photo. No, he changed the color of the original photo, the original color photo of it taken. He changed the color of the photos in the archives.
Are you sure? I mean, don't forget on the internet you can get various copies of the very same photograph. They could have been changed,
To me,
you
it's
know.
to me it's Venus and Mars. I mean, and all you have to do is look at the news footage of them again holding it up. One's white and one's gray.
Yes, okay. I mean, I don't want to be unkind. I appreciate that you are fascinated by the subject, but I think you've gone off on a little bit of a tangent and attached
Okay,
great importance to this when I really don't think it's anything more than variations between photographs, different copies of the same photograph, and the fact that material does change in color slightly over time.
yeah, but
And my explanation, by the way, people who saw like Brennan thought he was wearing a light colored shirt. I think it's his t-shirt that is visible. And the people are, you're just remembering, you've got this t-shirt on underneath your shirt and it's white, that they're remembering that the assassin had a white shirt on rather than remembering that he had a shirt over a white t-shirt. That would be my explanation for that. Yeah. Okay
anyway,
then.
let's do a closing. Look at all the I had. Look at all the notes I was taking during our discussion.
What, today?
Yeah, today I was like, I had so many questions to ask you.
You
We
wouldn't
got,
win any awards for note-taking neatness, would you?
and uh Virginia. I wrote one thing on here. Blue jeans. Virginia Davis said that the Tippit killer wore blue jeans. Does that prove Oswald didn't do it? Because he wasn't wearing blue
No,
jeans.
no, lots of people wore blue jeans. Yeah, yeah.
If only it were that simple.
I know, I know.
Hey,
You should. Have you visited the online, the National Archives, to look at the 3D images of all the items of evidence? I don't know. Are they even available yet?
they
I
only
know they're being prepared for the last 3 or 4 years.
they only did the bullets,
Okay.
and those are now online. But um,
Bullets and shell casings. I've got a question for you. I got an email from the Paul Hope group, a lawyer in New York called Lawrence Schnapp, who you'll have heard of. He's quite a big light in the conspiracy um, group. And he's talking about the remaining documents. There seems to be a lot of talk amongst conspiracy theorists that these remaining documents at NARA, the archives, are going to be of major interest and show evidence of a conspiracy. There are variations in reports on the number of documents that are still left. For instance, Fred Litwin is fairly clear that he believes that all or almost all of the documents have been fully released. There are others saying no, there are hundreds, if not thousands, that are yet to be released, although they've been released in redacted format. What's your gut feeling on this? Because mine, just in a nutshell, is that there's something there that perhaps the CIA overlooked or missed deliberately or through ineptitude regarding a threat by Oswald in Mexico City and or others, and that's what's being withheld. But it's just a so-called educated guess. What's your take on all that?
well, if Donald Trump is being truthful that what he saw was so damning that couldn't be released, um, I just don't. I don't. Do I think he? As I said last time, do I think he's going to release it? No. If he does,
Yeah.
that would be great, but I don't think he's going to.
Okay.
But if he does, we can make another video about it. But I don't think he's going to do it. But like I said last time as well, there are 400 full page redactions. That's a lot. So
400.
that's a lot. So and people like Bugliosi and also Litwin say things like, "Oh well, John Tunheim said there's nothing, you know, explosive in the secret documents." I'm like, he didn't go through all those secret documents himself.
No.
He didn't do that. It was other people who did that. And there's millions of
Yeah.
documents. You think they're gonna? So we'll see. We'll.
Okay, Matt.
Hey, Patrick, thanks for coming on again. It's been great.
Yeah, good. I've enjoyed it. Thank you, and particularly enjoyed the discussion around the book depository and what happened after the shots and so forth. And yeah, I mean, just let me know if you want to talk about anything else. Just give me a heads up, and I'll be happy to join in.
I really wish I could have been in your shoes to see Larry Harris and knock on those doors and
I know. Yeah,
see the Tippit crime scene as it was. And go through Larry's files, and I,
yeah.
I really wish I could have done that. See, you had that experience. I'll never get that experience.
I
Larry,
suppose in 1983, it was pretty close to what it all looked like in 1963.
yeah, and
But now it's changed
it's completely
massively.
different. There's a school there and everything. You can't walk
Yeah.
out anymore going there, going east. Um, and Larry Harris died the year I was born, so rest in peace. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
Well, he
Patrick.
was killed in a car crash, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was killed in a car crash
Whereabouts?
in was it in Alabama or was it in Ohio? I think it was in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he died in a car accident. He had yeah, so wonder
Oh
where his
dear.
research is. But anyway. Hey Patrick, thanks for coming on.
Okay. Okay, Matt. All the best.